Good morning, my dear students. Today we are going to start with the chapter number 4 of social science, a history chapter, how the traders became the rulers. That means we have already seen in the first chapter, the history one, that how the Britishers came to India and they ruled over it. They also traded with us, and so now they want to become rulers, right? Now, to my dear students, you can take your textbook in your hand. I've shared some of the pages along with the PPT, so it will be helpful for you. The same thing is there, but take your textbook and sit it so that you can understand what I'm explaining it to you today. Yes, the first thing, that is how the traders became the rulers. The children were engrossed in reading the story of two cats and monkey during the recess. On reading this story, Jay and Mitali were making fun of each other. Their class teacher, who was sitting beside them, said, "Children, this is a policy. The third party takes the advantage of the quarrel between the two." The British had expanded their empire in India with such a policy. So they were sitting, the teacher is asking that because the children were gathering and they were engrossed in reading the stories of cats and monkey during the recess, and the third party comes and he is having they were sitting there beside them, and this is a policy of the children. They were sitting and they were reading the books, and the third party takes the advantage of that quarrel between the two. That means that the two children who are sitting there, who are reading the books, the third party comes, that means the third child comes over there, and he is also engrossed and he is also taking part in that, and some of the activities also he is taking part. So what happens? So like that way only it is being compared with it, that the same thing, the Britishers has expanded the empire in India with such a policy. Jai asked, "Sir, how it is that possible?" The class teacher replied, "Let us go to the class, but as we are at home, so let us understand us to this online education, and there I will explain about the British came to India and established the rule over the Indians." By the mid of the 18th century, the British had started to emerge as a strong power on the Indian political horizon. Do you know that the British came to India only for trade? Yes, basically they came to India for the trade activities, for having the different types of activities, for doing the business, but the Britishers had ruled over for many years. Initially they took permission to trade in the Indian states. Then how did they become the rulers of entire India? The history of the British rule arouses many such questions. To sever this economic interest, they increased their political hold on India with the use of British diplomatic tactics. Tactics means different types of decisions and the suggestions, right? They have applied different suggestions and different experiments for becoming the rulers in India. We'll see the first thing, that is the Wellesley's policy of expansion. Now, Wellesley, we all know, when Wellesley came to India, he is the Governor General. The cutthroat competition existed between the England and France. The cutthroat competition means it was a very tight competition between England and France. It was necessary to check France from becoming powerful in India so as to expand the British rule in India. That means it was very much necessary. It was necessary to check that whether France has become powerful in India or not, and so they can expand the British rule in India. And so Wellesley, a very renowned Governor General, had introduced a new plan which was known as the subsidiary alliance system. That means a subsidiary alliance system has been introduced in India. As per this scheme, now what is the scheme? any princely state means a political state, that accepted the alliance had to keep and maintain the British army as well as keep a British representative in the royal court. That means that accepted the alliance. Alliance means a connection between the states, right? Those who are keeping the connection between the states, a relation between the states, they had to keep and maintain the British army over there, as well as keep the British representative, one of the representative, elected representative, they have to keep it in the royal court, right? So that alliance system was there, and this way the British could maintain their army without spending any money. However, the princely states were not allowed to utilize the army at their own will. The princely state, I told you that a political state, their own state, was not allowed to utilize their army at their own will, only with the permission only they were giving. Then this system, which made many feel secure in the beginning, made them feel enslaved. Yes, this system which Wellesley has introduced it, firstly many people thought that it is secure, that means we are having army, they are giving the protection of the army, but rather made them feel enslaved. Now what do you mean by enslaved? That is strip one of freedom. That means your freedom is being taken off, your freedom is being taken off, and you are being threatened, to give some orders for it, right? And so the subsidiary alliance acted like a slow poison for the princely state of India. So subsidiary alliance which came introduced in India, but it became a slow poison. Why? Because firstly they made the people secure that the states would have the British army and many of the things which are securing we can say that can be a security for the state, but that when time flies, at that time they feel enslaved. They felt that their own freedom is being snatched. Their own freedom is being snatched off. They have been taken off, and they have been threatened. Because now the supremacy of that power of the Governor General was more. So only what he says, that only will be possible, and is being threatened that if you are not doing this thing, we are supposed to do some particular, and we are supposed to act it upon you on such a particular thing. So they was very much frightened. So people were calling that subsidiary alliance acted like a slow poison for the princely state of India. The Indian states that become the victims of the subsidiary alliance were Hyderabad, underline this thing, that is Hyderabad, Mysore, Ayodhya, Jodhpur, Gaikwads of Vadodara, Peshawars of Pune, and Scindias of Gwalior. So these people they became the victims. Yes, firstly they gave very much security to the people that we are going to allow to keep one British representative in the royal court and along with their troops of army, so you will feel secured. But as time passed, they came to know the actual scenario of the Wellesley's expansion. So the people feel enslaved because they thought that their freedom is being snatched off, they have been taken off, and so they were threatened also. And so the victims of the subsidiary alliance, these people were there of the Hyderabad, Ayodhya, Mysore, Vadodara. These people had become the victims of the subsidiary alliance system. Then the Nizam of Hyderabad was the first victim of the Wellesley subsidiary alliance. That means the Nizam of Hyderabad, he was the great powerful that ruler. So at that time he became the first victim of the Wellesley subsidiary alliance. Then it was Mysore and Ayodhya. So step by step everybody was the victim for it. Tanjore and Karnataka met with the same fate. That means the Tanjore and Karnataka was having the same destiny of having the victim of Wellesley's alliance, subsidiary alliance system. The British made the Marathas fight amongst themselves, and consequently made them accept the subsidiary alliance. So the British has made the Marathas fight themselves to make the subsidiary alliance system. Owing to the loss incurred by the Nizam in his fight with the Marathas, he was the first to accept this alliance. Tipu Sultan of Mysore refused to do so, but after the British victory, you can see the battle has been fought, a battle fought by Wellesley, because these things were happening over there. So definitely a battle was supposed to take place, because the people were being threatened, the people were being their freedom was being snatched away, and so the battle was being conducted. And so the Tipu Sultan of Mysore refused to do so, but the British victory in the 4th Anglo-Mysore War, Mysore was forced to become a subsidiary state. Subsidiary state means a secondary state, rather than being a primary, that is a first state, princely state. They were forced to become a secondary state. Maratha chief fought among themselves after the death of Nana Fadnavis. So basically Maratha chief, then they fought among themselves. Why? After the death of Nana Fadnavis. Now who was Nana Fadnavis? That he was a statesman of the Maratha Empire. He was a very much statesman. Now you will be thinking that what do you mean by statesman? Statesman means those who conduct business and government policies, those who frame the business and government policies, that people are known as statesmen. So Nana Fadnavis was the statesman at that time at the Maratha Empire, and so after his death the Maratha chief fought among themselves. One by one, all the Maratha states became the victim of divide and rule policy, and so at that time everybody became the victim, and the divide and the rule policy of the British Empire came. The other states, namely Ayodhya, Gorakhpur, Tanjore, Karnataka, Farrukhabad, also suffered the same fate. In this way, within a span of 7 years, Wellesley expanded the company rule and made the British the supreme power in India. So you came to know that how Wellesley had he has ruined all the states. Yes, one by one everybody was a victim of it, and within a span of 7 years, 7 years is not a small gap. 7 years he had expanded the whole rule and made the British supreme power in India. So he had the main power in India by introducing the subsidiary alliance system, right? So that was one of the greatest power of Wellesley, and to basically make the victims, the different states were the victims of this Wellesley's alliance system over it, right? So definitely it was one of the greatest period. The span of 7 years, it was very, very crucial and hard period for them, the people living in these states, because they were not allowed to do things by themselves. The freedom was snatched away, taken away, and they were being threatened by this system. And so it was a very, very much difficult moment at that point of time for the people who were living in these states, actually became the victims of subsidiary alliance system. Then comes the expansion of the British rule in India. The expansion of British rule. After finalizing the subsidiary alliance treaties with Mysore, Nizam of Hyderabad and Maratha chieftains, the British moved towards northern part of India. Now the Britishers are moving towards the northern part, right? After finalizing the alliance system, because he had already finalized the subsidiary alliance systems with the treaties with Mysore and Nizam of Hyderabad, and now they are going to go up in the northern states. Then they entered into the treaty of friendship with Nepal, sensing a threat from it. They fought many battles to secure the frontiers. Then again, when entering into the treaty with the northern states, they had to fight many battles to secure the frontiers. To secure frontiers means the line of border separating the two countries. That means now the line which is the border which is separating the two countries, that is known as frontiers, and so they wanted that frontier, right? And so they fought the battles for that because they wanted to secure that frontiers. Friendly relations with the Sikh king Maharaja Ranjit Singh helped them to win the battle with the Afghans and expand or establish the rule in Sindh. So Maharaja Ranjit Singh, he was a very famous king over that time at the princely state of Punjab, right? We can say the Sikhs. So basically the British had so they helped them with the battle with the Afghans and established the rule in the Sindh Empire, right? The British has an ambition to capture the Sikh kingdom. Now they were the eyes to capture the Sikh kingdom. Yes, the Sikh people are there. He wanted to take over that kingdom, which was a very, very much powerful kingdom, but they could not do so as long as Maharaja Ranjit Singh was alive, because Maharaja Ranjit Singh was so powerful, was so strong, that he was ruling the entire empire of the Punjab princely state at that point of time. So he was very, very much powerful. Nobody ever tried to overcome over it. So the Britishers thought that we should not spoil the relation with Maharaja Ranjit, because British had already in mind that they want to secure the kingdom of Punjab. They wanted the whole Sikh people's kingdom. So he wanted with the fighting, it was not possible. Why? Because this Maharaja Ranjit Singh was a very strong ruler. So they kept a very friendly relations, right? You can see over here the Maharaja Ranjit Singh, he was the first king of Punjab. So they kept friendly relations with Maharaja Ranjit Singh. Ranjit Singh was a strong ruler of that time. He had set up a strong army with help of the European officers for the protection of his state. You can just mark it over it, that how powerful that man was, that he had European officers. With the help of the European officers, he protected his state. He had a very good force of protection of his state. He attained victories over many nearby states. After his death, my dear students, now if a great king dies, definitely there will be a lot of changes over the kingdom, because how the supremacy, how he was ruling over it. Now that point of time, nobody is going to rule according to it, right? It can be possible that many people's freedom, they may be having their own individual choices. Everybody will be doing as per their own choice. But no, this Maharaja Ranjit Singh, he was very, very much popular, and he was doing it in a very good way to protect his kingdom. But what happened? He had attained victories over many nearby states. After his death, Punjab suffered anarchy. Anarchy means the absence of government and the freedom of individual. That is, the government was not because there is a lot of absence of government. The government interference is not at all there. No rules and regulations, no policies, only the individual's freedom. What you tell, that is perfect, right? So that was one of the basic thing. So after the death of Maharaja Ranjit Singh, Punjab suffered anarchy. Governor General Henry Harding, he was one of the commander-in-chief of the British Army, came to India and brought the Sikh rule completely under the British rule, with the policy of interference and annexation. So when after him, Governor General Sir Henry Harding came to India and brought the Sikh rule completely under the British rule, with the policy of interference and annexation. Yes, so the interference and annexation. Now, what do you mean by annexation? Annexation means, in a simple way, I will give you the example that if a big powerful country you want to take over, if you are a big powerful country and you want to take over a smaller country, take over means if you want to rule over that country, or you want a small part or a portion of that country, you can simply occupy it with your army. Yes, you can just occupy it, you can just take it by setting up your armies over there, right? By setting up a troop of army or having a protection of your over there in that particular portion of your army, so that that portion will come under your rule. So that is known as annexation. So the Sikh had completed rule under the British rule with the policy of no interference and annexation. So annexation, I told you meaning over that you can, if big powerful country, if you want to take over the smaller country, by sending some of the army, you can occupy it, and that portion that is annexed. Yes, that is, you already, now that portion is annexed. You cannot that people cannot come in that portion. You have taken that whole part of it, so yours rules and regulations will be applied in that portion or the piece or a smaller country which you want to occupy for it. Now we will see about how Dalhousie has made the policy of annexation. The Dalhousie's policy of annexation. The aim of Wellesley's policy of expansion was to enslave the native kingdoms without using much of the British resources. We all know that the aim, what was the policy, Wellesley's aim, that to expansion was to enslave. I told you the enslave means to basically, what do you mean by enslave? To strip. I told you to strip one of the freedom, to take over the freedom of the people, the native kingdoms, by not using much British resources. Without taking the advantage of the British resources, you are taking the snatching of the freedom of the people. The states that accepted the subsidiary alliance considered the British as their friends. Eventually, in the absence of internal and external threat, they became irresponsible and the administration started deteriorating. That means eventually in the absence of also the internal and external, the threats, I told you the people who are having the threats, they became very much irresponsible, and so at that point of time the administration also came down. They deteriorating means it comes down, so it is decreasing. The outcome of this conspiracy of the British was anarchy in many princely states. The outcome, what was the outcome? That is the anarchy in many princely states. That means like this, when the administration came, when the administration is going to come down, the decreasing, when it is decreasing, the anarchy, these states are applying the anarchy in many princely states. Anarchy, I told you, that means the government interference is not there, only the individuals are having their own rights. Then the Indian rulers got trapped in it. The British got an excuse to start interfering into internal affairs. So now the Indian rulers got trapped in it. So they were not knowing what to do now. They got trapped. How the mouse is getting trapped in a box, at the same point of time the Indian rulers also got trapped in it. They were very much frustrated that what to do it. The British got an excuse to start interfering into the internal affairs of this state on the pretext of putting an end to the anarchy. They annexed many states. Now the British, what they got an excuse. The Britishers are very smart. They got an excuse that we will do something that in order that the people may strive against us, that they will be attracted against us. So what they do, they have done, they got an excuse of interfering into the internal affairs of this state on the pretext of putting an end to the anarchy. putting an directly an end. That means now the government interference will be there. As per the rules and regulations will be applied to the people, right? And so the anarchy rule will not be possible. They annexed many states under the same excuse. Thereafter, Burma, now presently known as Myanmar, and regions and Punjab were also annexed. If the king died without a son, his state was annexed. That means without a heir. Heir means if a king is not having a son, that means he is not going to, that heirship is not going to have the son, because if a king dies, the next throne is going to, his son is going to sit on that throne, right? So if so they made a very much clear that if a king died without a son, his state was annexed. In this way, Satara, Jhansi, Nagpur, etc. became the victims of the policy of annexation. So these were the states, Satara, Jhansi and Nagpur. They became the victims of the policy of annexation, because in this basically a king had died without a son, and these states were being annexed. They have put into an end. Then we'll see about the changes introduced by Dalhousie. Now what he has introduced the first, Dalhousie had also introduced many of the changes over there. He had many reforms also. So the changes introduced by the Dalhousie aimed at helping the British rulers to make huge profits from the trade of tea, coffee and cotton by capturing the areas that produce these commodities on a large scale. To consolidate the British rule in India activate the British rule in India and to run the administration smoothly. Dalhousie was a very good person. He had reformed many other reforms he made for the betterment of the Indian people. So many changes were made and introduced by the Dalhousie in India, and during his tenure means during his time, the first railway line was started between Mumbai and Thane in 1853 CE. You can just see the picture over here, my dear students, that in India the first railway was built between Mumbai and Thane in 1852, basically at that point of time CE it is there, 1852, and the first passenger train ran between the two stations covering a distance of 34 kilometers on 16 April 1853. So in the textbook it is absolutely correct, only it is 1853 CE, but it was introduced, yes, it was built in 1852, and the first railway line when it started, it covering a distance of 34 kilometers only, my dear students, on the date of 16th April 1853. So basically it was introduced between Mumbai and Thane. So that was one of the great thing for the Dalhousie, made a very good thing, the railway line he has started over it. Then the modern postal system started in India, and wireless system between India and England too was introduced during his tenure. You can just see that how beautifully he is reforming towards the people, that how facilities he is giving it toward the people. So along with that he also started the postal system and also the wireless systems with the Wi-Fi and the internet connection he started between India and England too at his tenure. Again, next he passed a laws to ban child marriage and advocate widow remarriages. That is one of the worst thing over that. He also banned the child marriages, right? The child marriages was not at all, he banned it, so he didn't like it. So basically he banned the child marriage and advocate also the widow remarriages also. English education spread in India during his time. The people became very much relevant about this subject English, and so he introduced the English education and spread whole over India during his time. So people came to know and they were very much fluent in the English education at his time. The first three universities in India were established in Mumbai, Chennai and Kolkata in the year 1857 CE. Thus, reforms were basically for the expansion of British rule and the ease in administration. So in order to have the good administration, he introduced these policies for the betterment of the people, so the whole country's administration works smoothly. Although Indians benefited later on, they had to suffer a lot with the introduction of the British reforms. So although they had to suffer some of the introduction of the British reforms, but Dalhousie has made many Indians, they have given us such a great facilities to the people. So that was one of the finest thing, the Dalhousie, which he has presented for us. Now we all know that there are advantages and disadvantages. He has done such a beautiful thing, such facilities he has given, but there was some dissatisfaction among the people. We'll see what is the dissatisfaction. The dissatisfaction of the people after the policy of subsidiary alliance. Dalhousie's policy of annexation shook the whole nation terrible. Yes, so we all know that the subsidiary alliance system was a very much Wellesley's subsidiary alliance was very threatening, and he was enslaving the people. But Dalhousie's after the introduction of the Dalhousie's policy of annexation, the whole entire nation terrible, because he turned everything what was being enslaved. He gave the freedom, he gave the benefit, he gave the facilities to the people. And so this resulted in a dissatisfaction among the people towards the British. You must have seen the film Kranti. Kranti is a very old film, my dear students. You might not have seen that, but Mangal Pandey, that was definitely, you might have seen it. If you have not seen, then try to see these movies. At this time, the people were suppressed under the dictatorial regime of the British. The people were suppressed means forcibly they were put to an end. The people were they were being forced to put to an end of that entire kingdom. And in addition to that, the reforms made by Dalhousie added fuel to fire. Here it is a very good context given to you, my dear students. In addition to that suppress, Dalhousie's added fuel to the fire. Dalhousie's policies also, some people were having benefited to it, some people were not having that thing. They were still having the old orthodox policies, the old traditional values. So those people who are having basically with the orthodox, the traditional beliefs, they were not liking this Dalhousie's policies of annexation and also the changes which he has introduced in India. So what happened? So different people reacted differently to the railways, facilities of the post and telegraph, and Western education. I told you just now only, right, that many people, all the peoples are not same. The people were looking at their own perspective. So the orthodox people, I told you, that means the traditional people, rest those who are believing in the traditional values, the old beliefs, felt that the British wanted to destroy their culture. What they felt that they felt that these people want to destroy our culture. The reforms done by the British were basically for running the administration smoothly. The reforms were only done for running the administration smoothly. That was not only their main aim. That was not aim of hurting the sentiments of the people, because such policies were, or religious beliefs were there, but in order to eradicate these policies, he had made the new reforms, but the people were thinking in a negative way. Some people were thinking in a positive, but the traditional people who are having along with the old beliefs, they were thinking in the negative way. So the dissatisfaction of the people had reached a point of saturation, and they went in the state of rebellion, which result in the freedom of movement of 1857. Some people were dissatisfied, they reached a point of saturation. Saturation means the at higher level, right? If you go to the higher level altitude, the moisture is there. So they came at that point of saturation, and the state resulted in the freedom movement, and at last the state has the freedom. They actually resulted into the freedom movement of 1857. So my dear students, this was a very good chapter of knowing about the policies of annexation, the subsidiary alliance system, how the Lord Wellesley introduced the subsidiary alliance system, how he used to trade to the people, how he has expanded his system towards the India, which were the states which became the victims of the subsidiary alliance system, and how was the Dalhousie's policy of annexation, what different policies he has introduced towards the people of India, but then also the people were little bit dissatisfied among these policies, because as per they were believing to the orthodox policies or the traditional old beliefs the people were having, so they were not tuned to it about it. So basically they were dissatisfied among this thing. So we have seen in this chapter very much. Students, I will give you the workbook also. You have to write the question answers in that. Have a nice day, students. Take care and thank you.